What's up, everyone? This is John from Get Lifted Podcast. We're happy to have Lauren here today. Lauren, how's it going?
Good, thanks, man. How you doing?
Good. I appreciate it. I'm excited to talk. We have another co-founder of Raw on here, so I'm excited to hear
Yes,
your
yes,
story.
absolutely. I've watched Des's episode, I think 7 or 8 times now. So yeah, man,
That's awesome.
definitely hits the heart. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you so much for coming. So let's start off with a sobriety date and let the listeners hear a little bit about you.
Yeah, my sobriety date is December 8th, 2022. So I just celebrated 15 months a few weeks ago. My drugs of choice were cocaine and in the later years crack. But I pretty much take anything you would offer to me. I had, in the earlier years, in early teens, started drinking around 13, smoking weed, doing acid, stuff like that, mushrooms. I was probably one of the ones who started a little bit later, getting into like the harder stuff. But I guess before I get there, like born and raised in Montreal, Canada, um, you know, come from a good family. There wasn't surrounded by addiction, trauma. I had some extended family who maybe had a few battles with alcoholism and whatnot. But for the most part, my friends, my family, it wasn't something that I saw. My parents are still together today. I guess I had what you could call to a point that perfect kind of scenario, that perfect family unit. Parents gave me everything I needed. They were good at discipline and stuff like that, but I was a very sneaky kid as well. But no, they offered me everything. They were just always there for me, emotionally. It was very, always made sure we had food on the table, roof over the head, and we lived a good life, So when I look back today, I go like, man, I just didn't think somebody like me would have been destined for addiction. So yeah, like I said, I was a very curious person in the early teens, drinking, going to bars underage, using fake IDs. As I got into my later teens, started to get into, discover a few more things. Cocaine came in around, I guess 18, 19, 20, around there. Some of my friends had started doing it earlier. I remember seeing them and saying to myself, like, that's just something I'm never going to touch. Like, I know where that leads. And, sure enough, brain got curious. Today I realize it had a lot to do with those dopamine levels. I was always seeking that high, that euphoric feeling. Just wanted to feel good, and every time I discovered something that made me feel better than the last substance, that became the drug of choice. And so 25 years of using, I'd say, the first 10 were somewhat moderation. I was always been a very functional addict. I'd say the following 7 years after that, things got a lot heavier, very daily use, a lot. Really needed it. The last 7 years got really dark, especially when the pandemic hit and isolation and all that type of stuff. So, but hey, I'm just happy to be sober today, and again, happy to be here. So,
I'm happy to have you here. So what is was there a certain rock bottom I always like to ask, or kind of a pivotal turning point that kind of jetted you into getting sober?
in 2016, I kind of reached out. It was like a bit of a cry for help. I'd throw out little signs and whatever to family and stuff that things weren't good, that I needed help. But I guess not having anybody around, that family or friends who were really who'd really been involved in like addiction and stuff like that, or recovery. I guess like maybe just people didn't see it, or maybe I just didn't want them to see it. I downplayed it a lot. But I did, get into I did an IOP in 2016. I really enjoyed it, doing the meetings, the therapy, whatnot. But then about 3 weeks in, started using again. I was going to meetings and using in the bathroom. I was telling people I was still sober, but I wasn't. And then things just got, escalated from there. Things got worse and worse. But my rock bottom, I would have thought it would have been last October, not last October, the October of 2022 is, I remember one day where, I was smoking crack, and, I just ordered some food, which normally doesn't go well with that, but, I figured I'd get something in my stomach before I start getting high. And The next thing I know, I woke up on the floor in my kitchen. A 2 liter of Coke had spilt everywhere. My dogs were licking my face. There was pizza on the floor. They weren't eating it, which was a shocker because obviously they knew something was not good with me. But yeah, waking up with them licking my face and just staring at the ceiling and thinking like, God damn, like what just happened, And I had multiple seizures and stuff over the years from using a lot. Very scary. Again, I just downplayed that. But when I realized I was at my rock bottom was last December. My son, who's 26, sent me a letter. It was like a 3-page letter. And, he's, I guess, he's the greatest kid in the world. I mean, he's the reason I'm probably here today. But he sent me this letter, and what he wrote in there just hit so hard. I mean, it hit so hard that, like, he was telling me he understood. He understood that this is not who I wanted to be. This is not who I was. I was killing myself, but at the same time, I was killing a lot of people around me that really cared about me. I didn't know how to process that because the only way I knew how to process my feelings and emotions were to numb them out with substances and just get high again. And, that's what I did. Unfortunately, I did get high again after reading that. But a day or two later, I kind of just, let everybody know that, listen, I got a problem. I read that letter again, and, I realized this isn't just about me anymore. So I had to do something.
That's crazy because that's a turning point for me was a conversation with my brother. I mean, they're the same thing, arrest and everything like that. But there was that one conversation when you hear it raw from someone in like a loving way. I think that's so important.
Yeah. And I put my
Yeah,
son through a lot, man. The things he's seen and just the fact that he's just gives me the utmost support today. It's crazy, having your kid, having cops show up at the door and, with warrants for your dad's arrest, or, him having to take a train downtown to bail me out, or, it's hard to look back on those things, man, but I'm just grateful that I got the kid I do.
yeah, it's amazing. Shows the maturity he has too to already at that age kind of understand. But I think
Absolutely.
it's like something to touch on of that we don't know when we're going through it. I just had this conversation with someone like a day or two ago. And obviously it's like this like 50-50, and you let me know if you feel the same, but it's like you obviously I knew I was hurting family, but I really didn't really be honest with myself of how I was hurting them. And then I had that conversation with my brother, and it was the first time I was like looking in the mirror, like, wow, I see I'm really actually fucking up your life. Like I'm affecting you seriously. So I don't know if it felt the same for you, but I think listeners should hear that like an addict isn't just like screw everyone. You're kind of in a bubble, just like tunnel vision.
I think that was probably one of the hardest things, and it's something I'm working on today a lot. You live with a lot of shame, a lot of grief in recovery. Typically I was the person who, whether it was family gatherings, social events, whatever it was, being a young father, I always like to entertain, like to make people happy, like to be somewhat of a people pleaser, like a lot of, addicts like to be. And I knew it hurt them, but the hardest thing to understand was why do I keep doing it? I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to hurt people. It's different from, being of service to people today, but back, throughout those years, I was that person who like people could lean on, people could call when they were having trouble. I mean, I used to tell people when I'd see them, if they had problems with alcohol or whatnot, you got to get help and I'll support you and whatnot. And I mean, I was using at the same time as saying those things to others, so all of it was very confusing because like, I love my parents, I love my family, I love my son, I love my friends, and why would I do this? Why would anyone do this? And it took me a while to realize that like my addiction was not me. My addiction, I realize that today, my addiction doesn't define who I am. Today I look at my addiction as a separate entity, something that I have to work on every day, but it doesn't define who I am. And that helps me deal with a lot of the shame and guilt that I put on others. In recovery too, it's been hard because, we see our progress and, even in your first week, your first 30, 60, 90, whatever it is. And, I was never able to celebrate that before, and being able to do that now. And, wanting everybody else to see where you're at in your recovery, all those people you did hurt, how important it is to go back and be like, I want you guys to know that, like, I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't intend to do this. I would stare at the ceiling every night saying, cure me or kill me, but stop making me do this to myself and to people around me. But somebody told me early in recovery too that I got to give those people the time to heal themselves as well, because I did cause a lot of wreckage. I lied to a lot of people. I stole from a lot of people. And, there was times where I didn't want to wake up. But then at the same time, I would say to myself, like, I don't want my parents to find my body. I don't want my son to find my body. Like, I'm just putting more on them. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you that it's, as much as we know it's there, we just don't know how to attack it. We don't know how to stop.
Yeah, so it's our solution. So it's it's our spiritual solution at the time. That's all we know. So what did getting sober look like for you after you had that moment and
Yeah,
thought about
so
it?
like I said, in 2016, I made that first attempt, which didn't work out at all. So after, getting that letter from my son, after letting my family know that, things were really bad. And I remember even having dinner with my father a few weeks before. And, I think I was asking him to borrow money again. And, he had picked me up from work to take me for dinner. And he says, I don't get it. Like, how come you have no money? And I kind of threw out a comment saying, well, you wouldn't either if you spent $10,000 a month on crack, and he kind of brushed it off. Again, it was one of my little
Yeah.
cries for help. But, so, a week later, after, reading that letter, using again, but then realizing, like, listen, this has got to stop. I was being evicted for the 7th time in 5 years. So losing stuff along the way. I lost a lot of personal items, stuff that, again, it's hard to deal with the fact that it's gone, but, use that serenity prayer, right? But, so, there was a lot of talk. My father, my son were talking. They were the ones who kind of heading it up, most of it. They thought the best thing for me was to go into an inpatient program, go into a residential program. I wasn't for it. I had my 2 dogs at home. Again, I was still stuck in the whole, like, there's other ways that I'll do this, After fighting it a bit, finally, I agreed to go do an intake patient kind of interview. And we spoke to the therapist, counselors there and whatnot. And I was very honest with them about, what my using and everything and how bad things have got. But at the same time, I really wasn't into it. I didn't want to go. They were kind of pushing it on me, saying things like, isn't your son important to you? Aren't your dogs important to you? Whatever it would be. And then they had also told me at the same time that if I didn't come into a program like this, I'd probably have less than 3% chance of getting sober and surviving. So I'm sorry if you can hear my dogs in the background.
That's okay.
You're good. So yeah, So a couple of weeks passed, we were doing filling out paperwork, stuff like that. It was kind of dragging out a bit. And then at one point I received an email from my father and, basically just saying, and I understand why he did. Although I was angry at the time where he said, I don't think I'm prepared to put you into this program. Because it does, financially demanding and stuff to go into some of these residential programs and whatnot. So, I'd called the facility asking if there was any way I can make payment plans or anything. And it was like, everything up front or sorry, we can't take you, And I realize, a lot of these places, as much as they want to help, they are business too. They're not necessarily nonprofits. And, we do need them out there, but not everybody can afford them. So, that was not something I could afford on my own. So I remember, getting up one morning. And I was white knuckling it for weeks, and it was rough. It was really rough. The sweats, the dreams, the nightmares, the using dreams, just the withdrawals. Because I had stopped everything. I even stopped smoking cigarettes. I stopped smoking weed, which I smoked a lot of weed to come down off the other heavy ones. And I just went on Google. I was walking through a forest with my dogs. My father had told me to quit my job. I left my job. He supported me for the first 4 months. But I was looking for stories of people who got sober. And I remember hearing Brandon Novak from Jackass crew, that he had got sober and, really turned his life around. So I went onto YouTube and I just typed in, Brandon Novak sobriety, and it popped up this podcast called the Friend of Jerry podcast. And Brandon told his story about, his challenges and how he got sober. And, then I was crying. I was listening to it. I was just walking through this forest with the dogs, and I just wanted to hear more, like just hearing Brandon speak about his journey and what recovery's been like him, wanted me to hear more people's stories. So I listened to Jerry, Jersey Jerry, listened to him tell his story on the first episode of his podcast. And in there, he mentioned that they do online recovery meetings on Tuesday nights. And this happened to be a Tuesday afternoon that I was walking around. So, I took a shot and I sent a message to the Instagram page. And I got a reply like minutes later. And I just, said, listen, I've been in tears listening to hearing these stories. And it feels like I can take their name out and put my name in. And I can relate to this so much. And, I need help. I'm not doing anything now. I was going to a couple SMART recovery meetings in person twice a week, but, that wasn't enough for me. And he said, why don't you jump onto our meeting tonight? We have a meeting on Zoom at 8 o'clock Eastern. He sent me the link. I jumped on that night. And I was really nervous, man. Like, I like to talk a lot. I like attention at times. I like to joke around. I like to have a good time. I like to entertain people. But, this was a different world for me. I had to be vulnerable. I had to be open. I had to be honest. And I didn't even know how to do that. I lied to myself for so many years. I believed my own lies for so many years. So get into that room, and then I hear people sharing their story. And then I see Jerry there, and I see these other people there, and other people that had done his podcast and told their story that were in the room. And then in the podcast, he had a combination of, people from the community, from the group, but as well as, people like Jason Biggs from like American Pie, or, Mike the Situation, from Jersey, that he would have. And, it just made me start to realize, like, man, like this stuff does not discriminate, like it doesn't matter what family you come from, where you come from, doesn't matter your religion, your beliefs, color, anything. It's just like addiction affects everybody. And I went to that meeting and I loved it. I shared for the first time ever. And I got so much love from the people in there. Messages from people right after. Nicole, who hosts the group, and, another individual in there sent me messages, called me after. It was very humbling. It was something I'd never seen before in my life, like a group of people who understood exactly what I was talking about without even having to say it, and so I continued to listen to podcasts, listen to more of Friend of Jerry podcast, what led me to Dave from the Dopey podcast. So I heard his interview. And then he started talking about how they host 20 some odd meetings a week. I got a hold of their meeting schedule, and I did 4 or 5 plus meetings every day for like 4 months. I looked forward to meetings. I get up in the morning and I just wanted that meeting. I was struggling. I know they say one day at a time, but it was like 1 minute, 1 hour at a time at the beginning. And those meetings couldn't come quick enough. And the second I would get into one of those meetings, I just felt like I was at home. And I felt like I could be myself, something that I hadn't been in such a long time. And, from there, just continued to do meetings. I went, back to work about 4.5 months into sobriety. Still have the job today. It's a good job. But, life started to get busy too. And, now juggling a career, I have responsibilities at home, trying to focus on some self-care for once in a long time. Drugs takes a toll on you. I had to, have all my teeth replaced years ago. My family helped me with that. It's not something I'm proud to say, but it's what it does. It's what happens, But yeah, tons of meetings, man, that connection, people talking to people every day, doing one-on-one therapy. I had a home group here. Around month 7, I started working the steps. I got a sponsor. I went to a couple of AA in-person meetings. I liked the connection, but they were very big meetings. And being up in Montreal, too, was limited because a lot of them were in French. And I am fluently bilingual. I do speak French, but to express yourself in an environment like that is hard for me anyways in another language, to just really get that feeling and emotion out. So yeah, man, I just did meetings and meetings and kept on, developing these relationships. And like, again, it was something that I never knew existed. If I knew this existed years ago, I would have went. I would have jumped on, And as much as the pandemic was terrible, it did create a lot of these environments, these Zoom rooms, these online meeting groups that didn't exist before because in-person meetings were canceled in most places. And man, am I grateful they did, because honestly, I would not be sitting here talking to you today if it wasn't for, those communities and those people that helped me. So, yeah. So today I do a combination of things. I did the facilitator course for Smart Recovery, so I'm registered to give Smart Recovery. I, host multiple meetings a week. I do meetings every day. And again, I just stay connected. So, and work in the steps.
No, I love that. There's a lot I could touch on there. I definitely wanted to say that. I think it's funny that you said that because and we're going to touch a lot on the meetings and community, but I just been working with Jersey Jerry, not him particularly, but his Diamond Recovery group. They're getting back to me this week about, putting a shipment of my books into two of their rehabs. And I love the Jerry After Dark. I guess they're actually, they paused doing that, but for people that don't know, Jersey Jerry's a guy on Barstool, and he uses his platform to have a meeting about recovery, kind of like this, a podcast, and interviews people of all kinds getting sober. So that's so cool that you did that, because I got into that. My boy's like, you gotta talk to Jersey Jerry. I started listening. I was like, oh, these are some good interviews and stuff, good podcasts.
Oh,
I
he's
guess right
great.
now yeah, he's amazing. I guess they're waiting because always they talk to me, whoever his person is, about being on the podcast. But I guess they've paused recording more right now because he's
Yeah,
doing
they
his
haven't
other
been
one.
recording much. He moved to Chicago recently, and he's been quite busy with Barstool. But he is such a solid guy, and as much as all the people in these communities, I mean, look, I got friend of Jerry tattooed on my arm there with the dopey head in the middle of my sobriety date. I mean, that's how close I hold these people. But a guy
Really?
who's as busy as he is, how important recovery is for him, and how he puts his recovery first. I remember about 5-6 months in, there was somebody struggling in one of the communities, and it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I just like, this person was in a bad situation. And I remember Jerry saying, like, it doesn't matter what the situation, it doesn't matter, we'll take care of your dogs, don't worry about insurance, whatever it was. And this was the first time that I really reached out to him, and I sent him a message, and 30 seconds later he called me, and it's like 11 o'clock on maybe a Friday night, and I was like, wow, like, this is real.
That's
This is
awesome.
real how this works, man. Like, when people say reach out and I'll be there, reach out, because they're going to be there for you. Somebody will be there for you. So,
Yeah, I think that's amazing that he does that, even on, like you said, with that platform. It's hard, being like basically a celebrity and being that busy and all over social media. But I love how you talked about the meetings and that community. What that's something that is vital in my part. It's just amazing to have support, to know you're not alone. Um, and love for you to touch on. It's like, I think there's a lot of stigmas on the meetings. Whenever you talk to someone that hasn't done these things yet, they have these opinions, even though they've never done it or they've gone to two meetings. Like, oh, I think this. I'm afraid to talk in front of people. But it's a vulnerability, and once you get there, you realize, you hear other people be so vulnerable. It's like, wow, that person just said their dad died. This person just said they relapsed last night. Now I feel like I could open up.
yeah, I mean, I used to walk by, churches, and you could see people outside, and it was like the meeting after the meeting from an AA or an NA meeting or whatnot. And,
Yeah,
I'd cross the street, right? Because I'd be like, I don't vibe with those type of people. That's not me. But meanwhile, I'm walking down the street with a bag of drugs in my pocket, just waiting to get home to use or find like a corner where I can go use on, right? So it was nuts. But the meetings, like I said, it's been everything. And you're right, there is a big stigma. There's a big stigma just against addiction altogether. As we all know, we see it more for myself, anyways, getting into recovery. And the day I drive down the highway and I see a billboard, saying, it's okay. It's okay to talk about the fact that you have an addiction. There are places you can go. There are people who will understand you. There are people that won't judge you. There are people that you can be 100% vulnerable with. We don't advertise that, and I know definitely up here in Montreal, you see very little to none of it. And it's sad, right? And I mean, there's been all these movements over the past years that are really changing the world. again, one day at a time, like everything else. And I just really hope that, the same thing happens to addiction, that people start to feel like they can talk about it more openly. And going to those meetings is what helps. Like I said, even if you're somebody who doesn't like to talk much, just go in and listen. Just do as much listening. At some point, things are going to click. You're going to relate to these people. And then you're going to help change that stigma, being part of those communities.
I tell people all the time when they come reach out for help through my social media or the town, city I live in, I'm always like, there's no subscription. If you don't like it, all you gotta do is sit there. You know what I mean? Sit through a couple. God forbid, I haven't seen someone do it, get sober, and not like it. But if you don't, it's like, all you gotta do is sit there. You only show up, it's not like a spotlight's gonna go. I remember feeling that myself. Like, oh my God, everyone's gonna be like, John walked in the door. It's like, you're not that important. This one guy told me. It's like, no one's going to realize you're even
Exactly.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you raise your hand, ask for help, everyone's going to swarm you. But if you just go there and listen, no one even remember your face.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah.
don't
You
put
can
that
go in
pressure
under
on
the
yourself.
radar. You don't have to worry about it. And that's it too, But,
Yeah, and then you said, I think just being there to listen. I remember I related to when you said you relapsed and you were going there getting high. I was going the first year or two, and I'd show up sometimes. I could still taste like the Coke drip, or like
oh,
I'd be
yeah.
hungover, but I was hearing things that were starting to plant the seed. At least I was there and present, and it
Yeah.
starts to change.
I even think of things that, I did learn back then in 2016. A lot of people, we're hard on ourselves if we slip, if we relapse. There's people that have years behind them, and then one night something happens and, they have a drink or they do drugs or whatnot. And, sometimes it's just a slip. Sometimes it's more of a relapse for, an extended period. But, that's tough. But it's like when I have people come back into these meetings and share that, it makes it, it just reminds me how real it is and how easy it can happen. And to see that people can come in even after doing that and sharing that is very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, those are the examples for me that, like, you see that person, you're like, oh, I don't want to. And it's as bad as it sounds, it's like in this example, I don't want to look like that or feel like that again. Like, I see
Yeah,
the hate, the hurt in their eyes.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's sad.
Yeah, and then in the circle of life, it's like you're showing them it still works. So it's like I try to explain to everyone that's how like the energy of the meetings work. If people in the beginning are actually helping, the old timers, and then the old timers are showing it's possible for the new timers.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I mean, and I guess we could touch on at some point, what Des and I had started as well. But, like just today to see, we had somebody who celebrated in our community 90 days yesterday. And they reached out through their wife through another community and posted a message, and I had reached out to him about 90 days ago. And, a week ago, we had somebody who reached out to our page. And this person who just celebrated 90 days is now in communication almost every day with this person who's just got a week or two behind them. And that's just so cool to me. The way that happens, man, because that was like somebody was there for me on day one, right? And I was a wreck. I was a mess. I mean, they bug me all the time, especially at the Friend of Jerry meeting, because, now I'm like, I'm talking and I'm all da-da-da-da. And they make it very clear to people who are new, like, just so you know, he did not look like this when we first met him. He was struggling still. It was a rough time, so, yeah.
Yeah, but that's I'd love to hear more about like any obstacles meetings have helped you get through, or rough times in life when you really had to extra lean on the community. If there's anything that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot. Even when I went back to, look, as far as just the meetings and the support and being able to have a safe place to share and just feel loved, that was like that every community pretty much I went to, I felt that. But like I remember around 4 or 5 months, I was moving again. Getting evicted again, even though I was sober, but it's like, things were backed up so much and this and that.
Yeah.
And I remember reaching out to my parents, asking them to, co-sign for a place for me. And it was pretty much a hard no. And, I didn't take that too well. I'm sober now. Like, you guys, if there's any time in my life that I could use your help, it's now, and I want your help. And, And then again, that's where I reached out to some of these people in these groups, and I had multiple of them reach out to me and just explain, about the wreckage I caused them and giving them the time to heal, and not to take their actions as how they perceive my recovery, that I'm not doing it well. Because, for me, I've come so far at that point, even in 5 months, but for them, they're still healing. It might not take them, it's going to take them longer than 5 months, but like I said, I did primarily Friend of Jerry. I did Dopey. And then, coming down to last fall, things were getting busier in life. And, there was things I was finding that I was just kind of missing for myself in some of the meetings, and that, different types of structure, working on more like the behaviors and those type of things. And that's when, I reached out to Des. Destiny and I had been close, going to a lot of the other meetings together, and we had a small little group of us that were very close. And he said, let's start our own thing. Recovery is something that we're going to have to live with for the rest of our lives, which was tough for me to understand at first, because you go through surgery, you go into a recovery room, you come out, the scar heals, and you're recovered, and you may never have to revisit that again. So I had a hard time realizing that recovery really meant recovering the life you were supposed to live, and not the one you've been living. And once I understood that, I just, again, wanted to create more space for people to come and help them recover. So in November of last year, we started Raw Recovery, which stands for Ready and Willing. And, it just came out like hey, let's do this. We don't know if it's going to work. All it takes is 2 people to have a meeting, and we're 2 that want to start this. And hey, fast forward, 100 and some odd days. December 4th of last year was our first meeting, and we started off with 3 a week. And I'm repeating a bit of what Des said. But, now we have 7, 8 meetings. We don't schedule meetings on Tuesdays because we do the Friend of Jerry meeting. So we bring our whole crew over there. Sometimes we'll go from a Raw meeting into a Dopey meeting. We want to give people as much space and as many places as they can have access to. People's schedules are different. We have people in our rooms from Australia, from the UK, from, all over the world. And people reaching us just through social media. And then I'll talk a bit more about how the other reasons or ways it's been there for me, or how it's affected me. But, just even seeing somebody who, like I said, reached out to our page just over a week ago, and they actually sent me a text message a few days ago and said, I reached out when, I spoke to my social worker. They told me to get onto Instagram and start following a lot of recovery pages and whatnot. He says, I reached out to about 60 of them, and there was only 2 who responded to me. And that was Des, and from what he told me, yourself as well on your page. So, and I just thought that was so cool, man. That warmed my heart right away. I love that, and that individual's been in meetings with us pretty much every day since that day. It's tough at times because you get, man, it's hard to keep it together when I talk about my community, I'll tell you that, because when they hurt, we all hurt together when one person's hurting. When somebody's struggling and they reach out, or even if we think they're struggling and we reach out to them, there's an army that surrounds them, man. The love is just, it's crazy. Des said it. It's more like family than anything. And again, there's certain things that you'll get out of these communities that you just can't get from family, as there are things from family, you may not find in these communities. But, man, I know you and Des, both shared in the loss of, your younger brothers, and, my condolences for that. And I know that's got to be really tough. I haven't gone through much loss in that, in addiction, luckily, like I said. But, I remember when that phone rang that night, and we had just gotten off a meeting not long ago. And, Des actually messaged me to call her. And, she couldn't get a word out, and, man, I just listened to her, it was a cry and weep and getting whatever words out she could. But I couldn't believe how much that hit me. I remember we talked for a while. I got off the phone, and then I was outside with my dogs, man. And I walked around the block, and I just like cried and cried and cried. Like just trying to imagine that, but at the same time being so grateful that we had each other to reach out to and to get through that. And in our raw recovery, we have a group chat that I call the heartbeat, because every day there's activity going there. Sometimes we're joking around and laughing and celebrating milestones, but a lot of times people are struggling and they reach out, and we respond, and everybody responds, and they've been there for me. Man, I've cried more in the last 15 months than I probably have in the last 15 years, but a lot of it's been tears of joy. But I would not give up anything for the community. I want to see it grow. And the coolest thing about it for me too is that, there's no financial gain. There's no financial attachment. Like, I'm not in this. We're not doing this because, we want to get rich or, fill our pockets. We're doing this because we want to see other people recover. We want to see other people living the life that they deserve to live. Life is by no means perfect. I'm cleaning up a 25-year mess, dealing with legal issues, dealing with financial issues. I don't have a car right now, but that's fine. Could I push and really get it if I wanted to have one over the last 15 months? Probably. But, there's other things that are more important for me right now. Again, supporting others, supporting myself, and figuring myself out.
Yeah, I love your guys' community. And I can think back of like when my brother passed too. The first thing I always talk about it, I prayed, reached out to other alcoholics, and I can relate a lot to the tears in sobriety. I think I thought about it one time because like it'd be like monumental stuff that I would cry, and for a lot of years I didn't cry. I was just we're numb and hard when we're active, and I kind of wondered. I was like, why do I like cry in these weird situations that I wouldn't, like good moments or sad, but like I wouldn't cry in some of them. And I think it was like to actually, one, feel love for the first time, or realize the love that was there. And two, to realize like there is hope. I think I literally lost hope in everything. So like, even when I speak at my anniversary meetings, um, there's things like my brother and friends that died that like sadness, tears, but the rest is almost just like full gratitude tears. It's like, wow, there is hope. Like, there's always people here at this meeting that support me, that love me, that answer my call in a second. If I need something, if they need anything, they know I'll answer for them. And I love what you guys are doing. I joked on the last one with Des, like, there was some kid that had COVID when I spoke on yours, and everyone was like clowning him and making fun of him. And that's the joy it brings me, because I get that. That's true, like family. You're just messing around, but you guys are checking on them.
Yeah,
And
that
he was
might have
joking
been
back.
me who had COVID then.
Was it you?
It could have been, yeah. Oh yeah, it became a big joke that because I was just whining and complaining every day, and I had to
Yeah, I
bring it
think it
up in
was
every
you
meeting.
then.
Yeah. I had to
Yeah.
bring it up in every meeting, and they're like, "Enough about your COVID."
Yeah, because you
Um,
kept saying it, and they're like, "We get it, you got COVID," and I was cracking up, and I was like, "That's a real family there."
yeah, man. I had
That's
surgery
awesome.
last July for a hernia surgery, and I was nervous. I was nervous. Number one, about the surgery. I'd never had any major surgery before, and number two, I was nervous about what are they going to prescribe me after that surgery.
Mm.
Um, but they rolled me into the operating room while I was in a meeting. I was literally like in one of the meetings as they rolled me in, and like the nurse grabbed my phone and was like, "All right, gotta go," and I was like, "All right," But like
Yeah,
that's just how close to all these people I am. So.
definitely. I like to. We're wrapping up for the last like 5 minutes or a couple minutes here. Sorry, with you, I like to ask just a couple questions that I ask at the end of all the episodes. One is what would you say to someone struggling today, or just trying to get sober?
I would say that if you think you're alone, you're not. There's a lot more people out there than you think that are struggling. And pretty much, probably every single one of those people had a hard time, saying they had a problem. Whether it was like surrendering or it's a problem, with higher powers or God, whatever it may be. There is a much better life out there. It's hard. You got to put in the work, but it's worth it. It's 100% worth it. I put my recovery before everything, and it might come across as selfish at times, but I know the better person I can be, the better I can be for others out there. So, if you're thinking of giving up, and, I got sober at 46, I'm 47 now, and I had accepted my fate at 46 that I probably only had a few years left to go, if that. You deserve it. get the help, reach out. There's communities out there who are going to show you a lot of love, who are going to welcome you with open arms. And we'll be there for you 24/7, literally 24/7. I mean, in our group chat, if that video call goes off, like, I don't care what time of day it is, I'm going to do my best to answer that, and other people will too. So don't give up. Go to a meeting. If the first meeting doesn't click, go to another meeting. Just sit and listen. At some point, something's going to click, and then keep going back.
Love it, love it. I didn't even realize. See, I'm 5 years in. I'm still an addict figuring it out. My poster's falling down.
It's all good.
Oh, look at
There you
that.
go. You got
Take
it
that
again.
thing out of there.
Yeah,
Oh, we
we're
gotta
good.
figure that out.
We know where we're at.
Yeah, at least we know where we are.
Exactly.
Second is the best life advice you've ever heard, or one that you hold close, or a quick saying in rough times you try to remind yourself.
I'm going to say what I mentioned earlier because that was very important to me and it meant a lot. Is your addiction doesn't define you. Addiction is a disease. Some people may not agree with that, but it really is. It is a disease, and don't let it define you. You can work on those character defects. You can work on those behaviors. And, addiction, substance is only a small part of it, right? It's like maybe 10% of the problem. The rest is working on all those other things. And I realized today, a lot of the things I have were character defects I had prior to becoming an addict, lying, stealing, stuff like that. So, you'll become a better person. You really will.
Absolutely. And Lauren, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to give you a second just to let us know where people could find Raw Recovery or find you on social media. Again, I love Raw Recovery, and it was an amazing experience being on there.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much, Jonathan. It's really appreciate being on here. It's actually the first time I've done this. I'm excited to let people see it who have a lot of questions. They just know things went dark for a lot of time. But yeah, I mean, as far as personally on social media, I'm getting more active. I kind of fell off for many years for obvious reasons. But as far as recovery goes, that's pretty much what I do when it comes to social media. And, we've got Raw Recovery, which on Instagram is at Our Raw Recovery. So OURRAW Recovery. We're hosting meetings every night. And it doesn't cost a penny. Everybody's welcome. Just come on in and listen. We do that Friend to Jerry. You can find the Friend to Jerry one as well. And, there's other communities out there. So, yeah.
Love it, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Lauren. I appreciate you. Can't wait to see your journey and catch up
Thanks,
soon.
man. Appreciate being on this journey together, dude, and appreciate your time today. Look forward to hearing from you soon again.
Absolutely. And anyone listening, if you need help today, ask for help. If you don't, make sure you show some love to someone that does. And everyone, Lauren, have a great day.
Thanks, brother. Take care.
Appreciate you.